All right, now moving on, US President Donald Trump has said that Israel would have to make a decision on the next steps in Gaza, adding he did not know what would happen after the collapse of ceasefire and hostage release negotiations with Hamas. Trump underscored the importance of securing the release of hostages held by Hamas, saying they had suddenly hardened up on the issue.
When you get it down to a certain number, you're not going to be able to make a deal with Hamas, because once they give them up, then they feel that that's going to be the end of them. And what I said is exactly true. You know, they had a routine discussion the other day, and all of a sudden they hardened up. They don't want to give them back. And so Israel's going to have to make a decision.
The comment comes as France and Saudi Arabia are set to lead the charge starting Monday to revive the push for a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians at a UN conference in New York. The July 28th to 30th conference will be co-chaired by Riyadh and Paris. Now, in an interview with French Weekly, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that other European countries will confirm their intention to recognize the state of Palestine during the conference, without detailing which ones. Now, France is hoping that Britain will take this step, but Prime Minister Keir Starmer has reiterated that recognition of a Palestinian state must be part of a wider plan. At least 142 of the 193 UN member states, including France, now recognize the Palestinian state proclaimed by the Palestinian leadership in exile in 1988. Meanwhile, Hamas has said that ceasefire negotiations with Israel were meaningless under continued blockade and starvation.
There is no point in continuing negotiations under blockade, extermination and starvation of our children, women and people in the Gaza Strip. The immediate and dignified entry of food and medications to our people is the real and serious expression of the viability of continuing negotiations.
Now, Israel on Sunday announced a halt in military operations for 10 hours a day in part of Gaza and new aid corridors as Jordan and the United Arab Emirates airdropped supplies into the enclave, where images of starving Palestinians have alarmed the world. Now, for more on this, Brigadier General Dr. Mir Elran, who's a senior researcher at INSS TAU, joins us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for making time for us, Dr. Elran.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has denied that Israel is conducting a starvation campaign in Gaza and has accused Hamas of stealing humanitarian aid. However, we know that a recent US aid report found no evidence of looting by Hamas. Well, given these contradictory narratives and the harrowing images from Gaza that have sparked worldwide concern, Dr. Elran, how do you assess the current situation?
Well, the situation is very complex indeed. The war is going on for a long time. It's almost 20 months now. And unfortunately, even though Israel has militarily crushed the Hamas organization, they are still engaged in a guerrilla warfare against Israel. And it's true also that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is very dire. And I think that Israel has realized that something different has to be done about that. This is the last decision that the government in Israel made over the weekend to expand the supply of food and assistance and medication and whatever is necessary to the people, because Hamas is really putting a pressure on its own civilians, unfortunately, and they are indeed suffering. There is no doubt about that. So it is also the responsibility of Israel to see what can be done about this difficult situation, and we'll see what happens next.
Right, Dr. Elran. And having said that, what do you think is behind PM Netanyahu's downplaying the significance of his change in policy on aid for Gaza with the setting up of a secure humanitarian corridors and allowing tactical pauses in fighting, whereas in the Israeli media, the latest announcements on relief for Gaza are being presented as a humiliating U-turn of sorts? Now, how do you make sense of this apparent disconnect there?
Well, I think that the different choices are very difficult. There is a dilemma here because we are fighting Hamas and we are in a position that has to be outside of the political and military picture in the Gaza Strip. And the problem is that so far they are still active and they are still engaged in guerrilla warfare, as I said before, which is a problem. And we have to respond to that in accordance with the severity of the situation. And beyond all that, of course, is the humanitarian situation. We understand that the world at large is concerned about the situation over there. And basically, it's true that Israel has to do more about it. And I think that that's exactly what we are doing right now. To what extent it will be significantly changing the situation in Gaza, I don't know. It's too early to say. But the most important thing is, of course, as far as I'm concerned, is to end the war as soon as possible, to get into a political dialogue with the intermediates and others for the release of our hostages as soon as possible, all of them in one package, and later on to see who is going to run the strip, the enclave. I think that Israel should not run it. We don't have any interest in that. And but the precondition for all that is that Hamas is being eliminated, and there is room for a political dialogue, on any kind of an agreement that is basically a political agreement. It has to be reached.
Right. And as we've mentioned in our report, Dr. Elron, at least 142 of the 193 UN member states, including France, now recognize the Palestinian state in a bid to revive the push for a two-state solution. Now, having said that, how do you see Israel and the US responding to this diplomatic pressure?
Well, I don't think that Israel considers that as an international pressure. I think that it is the wrong time to do that. Personally, I think that the Palestinians have to have, at a certain point, their own state in one way or another. They had to decide upon that by themselves. It's not for us, it's not for France, and it's not for any other country to decide for them what has to be done. And it has to be achieved by negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian people, one way or another. Right now, it's in a deadlock, has been a deadlock for a long period of time. And I think that if we can find a way to start any kind of a dialogue with Palestinians and with their representatives who are interested in such a stabilizing construct, then of course it has to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Elron, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.